You're in charge.
Good morning and welcome to the January 27th, 2021 City Council meeting. It is 9 o'clock. We will start with the invocation and then have the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll please stand with me. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you today. Just thank you for today and thank you for this community. I ask that you please keep us safe and to protect us from COVID. Lord, I pray for those that are sick and hope that they will soon get better. And I pray for those families that have lost a family member to this awful virus. I ask that you be with this council and that the decisions that we make are the right decisions for our city. Please bring us together, not only as a community, but as a state and a nation. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have minutes from the December 9th, 2020 meeting to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
No, we took them off, I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
We took those off to next time.
Oh, you did cut it? Okay. They're still on the
Yeah.
agenda.
So am I looking at the right agenda? Okay, so much for the minutes. Okay. First presentation, P1. I believe it's with Phil. Okay.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This morning we're going to do a presentation or really update on the innovation pipeline. But I wanted to, since we have new council members on deck, I just wanted to give an overview of how far we've come. So we started this process prior to 2017, but we opened the innovation pipeline in 2017, if you can believe that. So it was really a mayor's initiative at that time to foster innovation and entrepreneurship on a small micro level here in East Texas. And so fast forward to October 2020, where we signed an agreement. If you recall, it was approved by council to allow the nonprofit board, which was created, a 12-member board, to run the innovation pipeline at their discretion. So today, Phil Burks, the president who has been involved in this process through the inception and a strong supporter and cheerleader for the innovation pipeline, and many other partners we have had through this process with their donations. But I really want to take a minute to thank Phil because he has been the strength and throughout this process and the consistency that's made this, what I think, innovation pipeline successful. And then Trey Cobb, who's the executive director, and the board actually just hired him officially, a month ago, I think now. So I'll introduce Phil and let him give the overall, he and Trey give the overall presentation.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, it's great to be here. It's nice to start out a council meeting with some really good news, and we want to bring our report to you. It's incumbent upon us, since we receive funds from the city, to report out, and it's also a joy to do the same. And so we want to thank you guys so much for supporting us and cheering us on. Let's go to the next slide, please. I do want to introduce our board to you. It'll be on the next slide when it comes up. The next slide, please. There we go. Okay. All right, so this is your board of directors for the nonprofit that we have. And I've been introduced. Craig Wheeler is treasurer, Aubrey Sharp. I'm doing this for those that don't have the screen. Ruthie Blair, who's with us today, is also on the board. And Loretta Swan from TJC is on the board. Jason Wright, Cindy McCall, Bob Westbrook. Bob, we thank you for your input and help. And let me see, Dr. Mejia from TJC, Derek Bondurant, and then just most recently, Roger Lyerly, who was represented via UT, but he's coming back as a citizen to the board. And we'll go to the next slide. So we wanted to give you some of the numbers that we have. We have currently 90 active members. Now that may not sound like a lot, but Trey recently did a study across all maker spaces like this across the United States. And I think the average was 50. So we're actually above that, crazy as that may sound. But we want to get that even higher, and I'll tell you about one of our goals for that in just a little bit. We have 19 businesses that operate out of there, Etsy businesses. So they're makers who have actually created products and are actually selling them. We have 23 new businesses, 48 hobbyists that come and go and just do kind of little things. And we're going to tell you a great story about a business that was started on the very last slide of this. And the types of businesses that we have are e-commerce, web developers, content creators, marketing agencies, local breweries, manufacturers, independent contractors, churches, and construction companies. And I know of one roofing company that actually started making some of their components for bettering their roofing business, and they graduated onto their own capabilities. But that's the beginnings of it. The goal I want to tell you about is for 2021, we have set a goal for ourselves to have 10 new members each month, and we have plans in place to do that. Now, that's going to then double ourselves by the end of 2021. We're hoping COVID is more friendly toward us because it wasn't so friendly in 2020. We did lose some members, but we're healthy. I'm going to turn it over to Trey. We're going to tag team this a little bit because Trey is going to talk about our outreach opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having us here today. So talking about outreach, the main goal for this year is going to be awareness, letting people know about what the Innovation Pipeline is. When you go and you tell an individual about our facility, it's hard to get the picture across to people because a lot of them haven't seen anything like this in our area before. It's something unique, it's something special to our area. And so the main thing is to do more workshops. Before COVID, we were averaging about 8 to 12 workshops per month. Now, since COVID, we are looking at doing more live streams so that we can incorporate people who cannot always attend in our facility. That brings a bigger reach into the outer cities like Boulder, Jacksonville, Nacogdoches, other cities surrounding ours. The classes in the past that we've done coding classes, laser engraving, graphic design, film production, 3D modeling, and we've even brought in speakers from the community so that we can teach higher level skills in classes in our facility. And so that's our main goal for this year for outreach, is mainly awareness and then also bringing in more speakers to teach higher level courses.
And one of the things that we're doing this outreach for is not just to train, but honestly, it's a little bit of a sales presentation for us. Because as people come into the facility, you don't know how many times we hear, we didn't know this existed. This is amazing. And they get in the facility, they understand what it is, and it's going to help us drive memberships. So let's talk about our financial status right now, which is, this is where the water hits the wheel for everybody. At the end of 2019, we ended, our bank balance was $50,308 and at 19. And 2020, we ended with $81,508. We have a burn rate of approximately $10,000 a month, which is expected for 2021 with our employees and operations costs. We have opened up 21 with the same balance, the 81,000, and we have about 14,000 pledged from donors that is already in the bag, 80,000 so graciously pledged from the city, and we were so appreciative of that, and 20,000 for potential grant applications that we are going to be applying for. By our agreement with the city, we must apply for, and we will apply for, at least 3 grants during the 21 fiscal year. And we expect our ending balance to be nice and healthy at $111,000. And let's see, Trey, back over to you. I want to talk about our partners.
Next slide, please. So it takes a lot more than just our staff to run our facility. We have wonderful partners here in the local area. People from Train, Altice, as well as the City of Tyler have partnered with us with programming, donations, and also uses our facility on a regular basis. TJC is a unique partnership. We're able to use their work study program for staffing in our facility, and so we have brilliant students come through semesterly to run our facility. We train them, they train our members. It's a healthy relationship with TJC. Local companies like Genesis Group and Greater Texas Capital have also been working with us throughout the years. And then we have new partnerships with Tyler Young Professionals Network and the Small Business Development Center. With the SBDC, we are actually going to be putting on courses for the general public, things like WordPress classes, business startups, access to loans, different things that somebody who would start a business would want to hear, as well as mentorship. Next slide, please. One specific story I'm going to tell you about today is Train. So they have been using our facility to laser engrave models. They have been doing different things like assembly lines and working with clients, and one of the things they were originally doing was hand cut or glued models. Now, if they're being handmade, they can't be consecutively similar. They can't be streamlined in any way. And so they've been able to come in, and we've trained them to use our laser engraver and the software in-house to convert their AutoCAD files over to our carving software in our facility. And they've been able to create more accurate and streamline their models for clients as well as for themselves, and avoid costly rework, so that those models will allow them to actually create the model, show them before they have to build the entire assembly line. Next slide, please. And Phil's going to talk about one success story here.
Yeah, this is kind of my favorite slide, actually. This is favorite section, and we're about to wrap this up. Somebody asked me a long time ago, as we were beginning to create Tyler Innovation Pipeline, what is your measure of success for Tyler Innovation Pipeline? And I said, it's when the next Elon Musk stands up and says, I got my start at Tyler Innovation Pipeline. Well, we may not have Elon, but we have a guy named Nathan Lemaster. Nathan's standing back there with this pretty little bag. Did I leave the one down on my chair? Here's the story. Nathan was working for in the healthcare market, and every day he would see nurses popping out pills, thank you, left and right. Every day they're popping out from these blister packs. By the end of the day, their fingers were raw, and they challenged him and said, you got to come up with something. You're a smart guy, come up with something. So Nathan gets a membership at Tyler Innovation Pipeline. Nathan begins creating these things. In his bag, he has about, 27 iterations? 27 iterations he started and improved and improved and improved. And this little puppy right here can, in a nice sterile way, pop the pills out so their fingers aren't dead by the end of a day. And what you see there is he has a utility patent that was given to him by our USPTO, and it is production ready. And go ahead and go to the next slide, if you will. And that is the finished product there on the right-hand side, the production ready design. And this is one of the beginnings. And ladies and gentlemen, this is my Elon Musk standing right here. All right.
When will he be on Shark Tank?
I'll talk to you individually about Shark Tank. It ain't all it's cracked up to be. All right, next slide. And I just, that's where we're going to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Phil, just thank you for what you guys are doing. And you do measure things by success. And to see the success of this gentleman and the success of the program, it's kind of been privatized from the city, and it's good to see the direction that it's heading. And I think it really takes innovative people like you to create the success for the young men that are, not that you're not young, but for the young men that are also involved in it. Just so thank you for your involvement. And I know Bob's been real involved in this, so.
He has.
You want to say anything?
Yeah, I do. Well, first thing I want to do is ask Trey, I think this question would be appropriate for him. Would you just explain just the level of upgrades and maintenance to keep our innovation pipeline most current with technology and innovation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yes, technology, of course, we all know is constantly evolving. So we've done upgrades like creating creating additions to our workshop has been the main thing, bringing in new equipment so that we can complete that. So if somebody comes in, they want to build furniture as a business, we'll have everything there ready and available for them. We do certification training as well on any of the open blade tools like the saw stop, table saw, things like that for safety. But the main thing is when we go into 3D printing, 3D modeling, there's constantly new inventions being made for that. And so it's ever increasing the amount of skill that we need in-house because our members are ever increasing their knowledge. And so we have to bring in teachers and mentors into our facility to facilitate that.
Thank you very much. You know, this all started as the pinnacle of the Industry Growth Initiative pyramid, which was the strategic plan for the business sector in our economy, and as the city, we have our Tyler First strategic plan that guides our actions at the city. So it's really exciting to see the pinnacle of this being the innovation pipeline to literally show just the progress of, it shows just exactly what can be done if you just simply create the environment, the atmosphere for it. And
TIP is the poster child for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing, Bob, you triggered my mind on, this year you're going to see not only a membership drive that's going to be happening probably in, I think, April is where our target is. We are going to be listing out some of the major things that we want to upgrade. Like we want a bigger, better laser machine. We're going to get some other equipment. And so we're going to list those things out for our community to help get behind and help us grow the facility.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see it grow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Mayor, I have something, if it's okay. I want to commend the young man for looking out for the medical community because I spent a lot of my career popping pills out of bubbles. So I really appreciate that. And then prior to COVID, I enjoyed weekly coming down. And I especially like your green room because I love radio. So we were able to do radio from your green room.
How many would you like to order?
Thank you.
Any other comments from anyone?
Does he have other surprises in that bag?
The original? Yeah. So the very original, before I realized I could go to the pipeline, pick this up. So the very original, before I went to the pipeline, was made out of PVC pipe. And the idea was similar to a pill cutter, and then it just kept evolving. One of them involved like a wrench-like design. One of them had like a rotating gear that I was able to create with their machine. But eventually got to a place where I would go to the nurses that challenged me at the beginning. They were my beta testers. They would tell me what they liked, what they didn't like, and then what plastic it needed to be made out of, all that stuff, and then I was able to do that there. So it was a really cool opportunity to have this available, and recently I just made some awards for one of my other businesses. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, so yeah.
You're a wonderful prospect for Shark Tank. Mr. Wonderful would love you.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we've got our zoning items, Z1. Cassandra, if anybody calls in, can you just let us know instead of me asking it for each item? All right, Kyle, go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The first item here is a zone change request from R1A Single Family Residential to R1B Single Family Residential. The applicant's requesting the zone change to be able to develop a single family home. All adjacent properties are zoned R1A Single Family Residential and are undeveloped with the exception of the property to the south, which is developed with a single family home. The request is consistent with the future land use guide, which identifies the property as single family, medium, low density. The applicant plans to develop a 1,600 square foot home on the property, and this will help achieve the Tyler First goal of adding more households to the north end. Of the 16 notices sent, 0 were returned in favor or in opposition to the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommends approval.
Any questions for Kyle?
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Sellers. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Phil, you don't have to stay around unless you just want to watch good government at work. Thank you.
Yes.
Great, okay. This next request is a zone change from RMF multifamily residential district to R1B single-family residential. The applicant's requesting the zone change to develop a single-family home on the property. The properties to the northwest and the east are zoned for multifamily, but are generally developed with single-family homes. And the property to the east is the Goodman Museum property. The properties to the south are zoned M1 light industrial and are developed with commercial use. The request is consistent with the future land use guide, which identifies the property as single-family and single-family attached. The applicant plans to build a detached single-family home, and the request will allow them to pull a building permit to do so. Of the notices that were sent out, 0 were returned in favor. 1 was returned in opposition with a protest calculation of 4.89%. The neighbor did not state a reason for their opposition. Staff would note that this request is consistent with the development in that area of single-family homes. The Planning and Zoning Commission, by a 5-0 vote, recommended approval.
Any questions for Kyle? I don't have any cards on this item, so I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Wynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Z3.
This is a zone change from a planned office district, or POD, to R1B single-family residential. This is in Council District Number 3. The purpose of the request is to allow also for the property owner to develop a single-family home. The properties to the north and south are zoned R2 two-family residential and are developed with single-family homes. The property to the east is zoned for commercial use, but is developed with a single-family home. And to the west is R1B, but is currently undeveloped. The request would amend the future land use guide, or actually is consistent with the future land use guide, which identifies it as single-family. Also, the applicant plans to develop a single-family home, which, again, this is in the north end and will help achieve that goal of adding more rooftops to the north end. Of the 16 notices that were sent, 0 were returned in favor. One neighbor returned a letter in opposition with a protest calculation of 4.42%. The applicant or the neighbor also did not state a reason for their concern. They are the property to the west of the subject property, but they are the same zoning as what the applicant's asking for. So the staff again would note that this would allow for the same type of development in that area to be allowed. So the Planning and Zoning Commission, by a 5-0 vote, recommended approval of this request.
Any questions for Kyle? I don't have any cards on this item. Anybody want to make a motion?
Move to approve at Z3.
Second.
Motion by McKellar, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Z4.
This is a zone change request from RMF Multifamily Residential District to RPO Restricted Professional Office District. The request is to allow for the applicant to utilize the property as a hair salon. And the properties to the north, south, and east are zoned for multifamily and are developed with single-family homes. And the property to the south is currently undeveloped. The property to the west is zoned RPO, zoned for office use, and is developed with an office. The request would amend the future land use guide from single-family and single-family attached to office. The property is currently vacant and was previously used as a medical office. The multifamily zoning district previously allowed for some office uses, so it was legal non-conforming. The property's been vacant long enough that they need to rezone it to allow for the continuation of the office uses. The owner is seeking to use the building for a salon, which is allowed in RPO. The parking for the use is provided at the rear of the property, as you can see on this map, and then also the next slide will have the parking shown. This, of the notices that were sent, 0 were returned in favor, and we received 5 in opposition, with a total protest calculation of 25.92%. Of since the opposition is over 20%, it would require a 3/4 majority of, or 3/4 majority of city council to approve the item. The opposition was, cited traffic concerns, as the reason for their opposition, and that there were previously, cars parked along the street, which made it tough to drive through there. With any new business, staff would review the new business for if they can provide off-street parking. And that was one thing we discussed with the applicant here, whether they'd be able to provide the required off-street parking. And the previous slide does show that for their proposed use, that they do have enough parking spaces or enough space for that on the property itself. And so with that being said, the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended approval.
So what's been in there for all these years?
My understanding, it was a medical office in there previously. I'm not sure what exactly type of medical office, but it may have been a use that is no longer allowed in RPO, and maybe it had too much activity, I guess, in terms of patients coming and going or occupants coming and going. So, but for the proposed use that she's asking for, the applicant's asking for, they do have enough parking spaces.
How many people will staff in there, or contract, or whatever it is they do?
I believe it'd be just her and maybe one other. That's what she mentioned.
So by providing the parking at the rear of the building, does that help some of the protest?
Right. Well, that will they're able to meet the requirement for parking off street.
But the properties around that protested, did they go to them and say, look, we're going to provide our parking behind the building, not on the street like in the future, or happened in the past? Were they good with that? Or they didn't approach them?
Yeah, we clarified that. We did not receive any of the notices or any retraction of the opposition. So,
is there any restriction on how many operators they can have in that square footage?
There's not. The parking the required parking is based off the size of the building or the square footage of the use itself. And so based off the square footage of the building that they're going to use, that's how many parking spaces are required.
Yeah, I realize the parking spaces, but I was just thinking as they grew, are there going to be more employees that are going to have to park in there as well?
That may be.
The applicant is here for questions.
Yes, okay.
Come on up, Ms. Gregg. If you can state your name and address for the record.
Arlene Gregg, 15139 East Ridge Road, ARP. I'm the only stylist that works there, and I also do life coaching, and a lot of that work is on the phone. I have an assistant, and I have basically a shopkeeper for my support products. So.
And no plans to expand?
This is my retirement.
Okay.
Yeah. So no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Gregg? Thank you. Thank you for coming. You know, Kyle, to me, it seems like this, are the adjacent properties RPO? Some of them?
The one to the west is, yes. And some of the ones, I think the ones to the west may be, the immediate one to the west is an office.
To me, it's almost like it's a little bit of a cleanup item because it's already been kind of used as a RPO-ish kind of thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
that whole area is basically, attorney's office, house, somebody, that whole area is really mixed.
There is a mixture. I can't recall exactly which properties are also office, even though they're zoned multifamily. But like I mentioned, that previously, that's why you see offices in there, because the zoning used to allow for that. And so this property has been used as an office for many years. So, yeah.
And my only concern was if she added more stylists, then there became parking on the street. She clearly is not, so I'm okay with it.
Move to approve Z4.
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Sellers. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Z5.
This is a request that the city council consider recommending or approving an ordinance making an uncontestable finding that all territory included within the city since December 31st, 2000 is part of the city. This is an ordinance that we review every year. It's known as the 20-year city limits ordinance that essentially is precluding any contest from any party that may challenge that they are in the city. So the local government code allows cities to adopt an ordinance declaring areas that have been part of the city for at least 20 years to be declared part of the city. Staff has provided a map here that shows everything in orange. Those are the property or the city limits as of the year 2000, and the blue lines are the current city limits. And so the ordinance here today would essentially certify that everything in the orange is actually in the city. So the Planning and Zoning Commission by 5-0 vote recommended approval of this request.
Any questions for Kyle?
Move to approve Z5.
Second.
Motion by Westbrook, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. R1, Heather, good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Mayor, Council. This is a request that the City Council consider adopting a resolution of support for an affordable housing tax credit project and the approval of a waiver of development fees for an amount of $500. Tax credits are awarded to eligible participants to offset a portion of their federal tax liability in exchange for the production of preservation of affordable housing. The allocation of tax credits is a very competitive process, as you may know, and the projects receive 17 points for a resolution of support from a local government. Providing a resolution and support for this project is consistent with the Tyler First comprehensive goal to provide sufficient housing for households at all income levels and all stages of life cycle. With that, it is recommended for the City Council to consider adopting a resolution of support for this project that you see on the screen that's located at the intersection of Donnybrook and Loop 323. Known as Scenic Park. And so with that, recommending the adoption of the resolution for support of this item here, this proposal, and the approval of a waiver of development or permit fees in the amount of $500. And just to clarify, we had originally 2 projects, however, one withdrew their application, so we just have one at this point.
We've got one card here from Jeff Beckler. Jeff, are you here? Can you just come up and tell us a little bit about your project? And if you can state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Jeff Beckler, 1329 East Lark Street in Springfield, Missouri. I'm representing the developer for Scenic Park Apartments. Mr. Mayor and Council, appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak to you today. And I'm gonna have to steal your intro because that'll work for about everywhere I go. But yeah, we're proposing 60 units off of East Loop 323 in Donnybrook. I had the pleasure of speaking with City Manager Broussard and Council Member Curtis about this project beforehand to kind of give Council Members District a little heads up of what we were trying to do. We're proposing 60 units, 36 2-bedrooms, 24 3-bedrooms that will hit several tiers of Smith County's AMI. And we'll have several amenities in the project. Tyler, from our research, has a strong need for workforce housing. And I think this would do a great job of providing that. The site is already zoned PMXD, which would allow for our use. I think it's a great location. Excuse me, with many jobs around. I think it would fit in nice. I absolutely love the site and how our project would fit in there. The site does have a couple challenges that we've already worked through with our architect and engineer as far as some floodplain on the site. It also has a high voltage line on the west side of the site. We've already addressed those challenges, and our site plan, I don't know if I provided one, but if I didn't, the site plan, we've already addressed it to where our project is on the eastern side of that site, so we've avoided those challenges. It just fits really nice in that location. I'm really excited about it. As we all know, it's super competitive. We're competing with a couple projects in Longview. We just have to see how the process shakes out, but it's really competitive. I have some more information if you'd like. If you guys have any questions, feel free to.
You mentioned to the other members that you talked about your company's practice of construction and management, where some build and sell and as soon as they can, and you had mentioned that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the great thing about our group is, you know, the buzz term is vertically integrated. So we not only develop, we also construct and we also manage. So, you know, and we're in this project and all of our projects for 40 years. We're not one of these developers that will turn and burn, as they say. You know, we'll be invested in Tyler's community for, you know, half a century, essentially. So yeah, and what was your second question, Councilman Kurtz? I'm sorry.
That you managed it for the long term.
Yes, sir. Yeah. We have our own property management arm. Thank you, Will Hoyt Properties, and we're just, I want to say we manage across the Midwest and Southeast about 16,000 units. So not our first rodeo. So yeah, from the time the dirt is scraped till 40 years from now, my guys, it's a family-owned company, they'll be involved, so.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Becker?
I do. Mr. Becker, the misconception is that this is just low-income housing. Would you explain the breakout?
Thank you for bringing that up. That skipped my mind. Yeah, the misconception is of what we do is, you know, again, a buzzword is NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And so when people hear affordable housing, you know, the program itself is called low-income housing tax credits. And I don't like that term. That's why I say workforce housing. The misconception is that Section 8's coming in, crime's going up. It's just, you know, this area of town is going to go to you know what. And could not be further from the truth. I mean, all of these residents will have to prove income. They'll have to prove employment. They'll have to pass credit background checks. They'll have to pass criminal background checks. And it truly is workforce housing. I mean, we'll be hitting 30 and 50 and 60% of Smith County's AMI. And so the only way you do that is proving income and employment. And what's great about the program is, you know, once you hit that 60% of Smith County's AMI, you know, your jobs are getting better, you're advancing your own career, and you're going to move on. You're going to want to own your own home. And then that 60% unit opens up to the next person that's starting out. So it's a great program. I'm proud to be involved in it. So yeah, the misconception is this is not a Section 8 property. It's affordable housing, workforce housing.
Great, thank you.
Well, I like your word, workforce housing, because you're right. The other names do come across as negative.
Right.
So, I'm going to start calling it workforce housing in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's something that I always call it, because when I first started, I've only been in the industry for 5 years, and when I came in, I had the same misconception. I would hear low-income housing and those negative connotations, but once you're involved in it, you see that none of that's true.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Beckler? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You know, these things have been interesting in the past, where I think several years ago we had a number of them, and we did a resolution and supported them all. And then, I guess it was last year or the year before, we had two, and we chose one. And now this year, we had two, and one dropped out, so we have one. So we can either do a resolution to support your project or not, so.
Yeah.
So, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you for your time.
Move to approve R1.
Second.
Motion by Curtis, second by Westbrook. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Beckler.
This next item is a request that the City Council consider adoption of an ordinance approving the appointments of the boards of directors for the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 3 and Tyler Redevelopment Authority. TERS 3 Board of Directors serve to approve financing public improvement projects and development projects as defined in the TERS boundary. And you can see here on the next slide, the boundary here in the north end. It consists of approximately 491 acres of land located in the northwest sector of the city along Loop 323. All terms that were appointed to the Board of Directors have expired, and additionally, these Board of Directors will serve as the Tyler Redevelopment Authority, which is the local government corporation created to manage and implement the TERS on behalf of the city. It is recommended that the city adopt the attached ordinance and approved appointments that you see on the screen to the Board of Directors of the Tax Increment Zone Number 3 and to the Tyler Redevelopment Authority.
Any questions for Heather? I'll entertain a motion to approve the slate as presented.
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Sellers. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, it passes.
And my final item is very similar to the previous. This is for TERS number 4. It is located within the downtown area and is approximately 382 acres of land. It's generally bounded by Beckham Avenue, Gentry to the north, Palace to the west, and Front to the south. The goal of this TERS is to continue funding the construction of needed public infrastructure and to encourage private development that will yield additional tax revenue to all local taxing jurisdictions. And you can see on the next slide our slate of board members. Both the county and TJC have sent their appointed members to us, and it is recommended that the City Council adopt the attached ordinance approving the appointments to the Board of Directors of Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 4.
Any questions of Heather? I'll entertain a motion to select these folks that are listed.
Move to approve 02.
Motion by Curtis, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 03. Hi, Kedrick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor and Council, you have item 03 before you. Is request the City Council consider adopting an ordinance amending fiscal year 2021 budget and provide funding to complete various community development block grant, home and housing choice voucher program activities, airport grant projects at Tyler Regional Panels Regional Airport, and to purchase and for purchases not completed by September 30th, 2020. These monies were made available, just as I stated earlier, because of items that we didn't complete as of September 30, 2020. So those items roll to each of these various funds, fund balance or working capital. And so basically we've got a request that you reallocate those in the current fiscal year. You also have an attached list that details out all of the specific amendments that we're requesting before you. And also, I would just like to note, there is one new item in the request. It is attached in the list, and it's for real estate property that's adjacent to City Hall. Just some of the particular highlights. The real estate property is approximately $275K. Also, the housing, we're asking for amendments of about $715,000 as well. CDBG, we're looking at about $907,000 there. Home, about $1.5 million. And then the airport, we're looking at about $2.89 million in requests. A lot of that's related to master plan updates, security fencing, and some taxiway improvements. Having said that, it is our request that you amend the fiscal year 2021 budget for these various grants and new requests that I've detailed out in the packet.
So this is just actually just rolling things over from last year to this year?
Yes, sir. And this is, you'll remember I did a budget amendment 2 or 3 council meetings ago. And this is particularly the one that's primarily our grants. So this is the second budget amendment that we've had this fiscal year. And typically we do about 3 a year. When we adopt our budget for the next fiscal year in the summer, September time period, usually there's a cleanup ordinance and there may be some budget changes or amendments at that point as well.
Any other questions for Kedrick?
Just so I'm clear, Kedrick, it's all rollover except that proposed real estate purchase?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's
All right.
$275K, yes, sir.
Any further questions?
Move to approve 03.
Second.
Motion by Westbrook, second by Sellers. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kedrick. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
My name is Paul Newhouse, and I'm the Environmental Compliance Engineer for the city. What I am bringing to you this morning for item M1 is that we continue with our cleaning and inspection work of our sanitary sewer lines. The second slide here, first slide, second slide, indicates that back when we bid this in 2019, Taplin Group LLC was the lowest bidder. And we bid this as an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery contract so that if we were happy with them, we could continue with them for 3 years. And so we are here at the 3rd year, and we've generally been happy with the work that they've done. So we want to continue with this work and continue working with Taplin. There's a little bit of statistics there. The first year we did this, we cleaned 77.6%, got 77.6% inspected and cleaned. Again, that was with a different contractor. We did better the second year. We did really good last year. And this year, I dug in my heels a little bit and really worked with Taplin to try and get them to catch up on some of this other that didn't get done the previous 2 years, as well as help us with some problem areas. So we kind of hurt their production to some degree. That's why we're at almost 91% completed for their contract, which still, considering everything, I'm happy with. So that's why we are bringing this to you to continue with the 3rd year. The next slide here shows the maps, I believe. Well, I guess they didn't make it in there. The basins that they've worked on or going to work on as part of this work are Basin 6, if you guys got the map from the council communication, 18 and 21. So 6 is on the western, little bit north edge of the city, and 18 and 21 are southeast and to the east edge of the city. The areas that they're going to be working on. So with that, okay, there you go. There's the overall map. So Basin 6 is that yellow one right there between the blue and the brown, and then this is actually an older map, but Basin 18 is there in the red, and then Basin 21 is right above it in the yellow. So those are the areas that we're going to be attacking this year. And then still, what areas that had some challenges, access because manholes were buried or whatever, we'll still be keeping up with our cleaning, or our cleanup, I'm calling it, on previous basins. So the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to award this contract to Taplin Group LLC for the third year of their IDIQ contract for $756, $835.50.
Any questions for Paul?
I do. Paul, do you anticipate that this year we'll be able to catch up with all of the work that had not been performed in the past?
That is the intention. That is a conversation that we had in depth with them at the end of last year and on site last week, and they are revamping some equipment, swapping out some stuff so that some of these more difficult to reach areas they will be able to access. So that is the intent and that is the goal. And I anticipate when we get through with Group 4, we're going to have a large group of lines that will be part of our Group 4 remediation when we get to that and start planning on that. I'm sorry, Group 5, when we start planning and working on the remediation next year.
So we've completed Group 1, we're working on Group 2, and so all of the Group 2 has been completed now?
Are you talking about the inspections or?
I'm talking about the work being done on the consent decree that relies on this work to be done prior to.
Group 2 is going. Group 2 will be completed at the end of this year.
But all of the cammering, cleaning, and identification of all the lines.
Now, there will be some of the remediation. If there's been areas that they couldn't access or they weren't able to get far enough down the line, there may be a remediation recommendation that we gain access and inspect. So from that standpoint, there will be some more inspection work done on Group 2. Yes. But that's all lumped in, if you will, with the construction work as well, because that is a recommended remedial measure that we submitted to the EPA on a few lines that we were not able to access and clean. Does that make sense?
Is that schedule, that calendar being kept in your office? Is that something that's being updated so far as our progress reports for consent?
It is, and that calendar and that kind of format has changed due to different requirements. So or different requests, but yes, that information is being kept up and is being populated, but we've got to work with Ms. Wade and put that out there in a better, maybe more readily, more understandable format, because quite honestly, a lot of that is internal and is up here, and just with the pace of work, a lot of that information is there, but it's probably not in a form that's readily available and understandable to just everyone. The lion's share of it is, but there's still some like this that we do need to get in there.
So I guess where I'm going with this is the fact that we haven't completed, we still have some work that we're completing from the previous years. Is this causing or resulting in any holdup in the construction of or the repairs of the particular group that we're currently in, Group 2?
No, the work that's going on in Group 2 was assessed. So whatever the remedial measure is was identified, was determined to be the best with our engineer, KSA, and so that work is not being held up. Now, there are always unknowns, there's always difficulties that we find, there's always going to be some type of interference that causes us to have to step back and maybe adjust on the go, on the fly. And So that's maybe a little bit of what you might be referring to, but if it's been identified, we go into group 2 and there's really nothing holding us up from doing the work. Now, there's always, again, there's always unknowns, there's always issues. I mean, we've got a system that's old, that's been around quite a while, that honestly, we're still discovering pieces of it. We're still finding that, well, we thought it connected here, but it really connects over there. So there's, you know, those kind of things are still being discovered, if you will.
Any other questions for Paul?
No.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve M1.
Motion by Westbrook, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Paul. What's this on your face?
I get that a lot. Baseball here, I don't have any up here.
That's good. Hey, Cameron.
Mayor, Council, Cameron Williams, I'm traffic engineer for the city. Before we get into the item for today, I wanted to provide you an update on our Intelligent Transportation System Master Plan and where we're at. So if you'll go to the first slide, we have completed our study. There have been one overall summary report that we have done, and that's been posted online so everyone can access that. And there's 14 other more technical reports and memos that were part of the project, and we've moved into implementing the year 1 projects. As we go to the next slide, you'll see, this may look familiar, it's the three-legged stool about what this plan includes. How do we achieve this plan successfully? And we need all 3 legs from a staffing, a funding, and the plan standpoint. And so where are we at? So first, to talk about staffing, there were 3 components: the quantity, experience, and the compensation. So since I spoke with you last, we have promoted David B. Long up to our traffic operations supervisor, not to be confused with David Long, the assistant police chief, just so you know, they're 2 different people. But David has done a fantastic job. He comes with a background in electronics and telecommunication, and he's making a huge difference in the operations and how we're working. There's been several instances where we've had problems at traffic signal cabinets and been able to troubleshoot those and fix them, where in the past it was just replace the whole cabinet. And so we're getting cost savings from that standpoint. He was also instrumental in making sure we got a generator out to the Troop and Loop during the snowstorm so that we could keep that intersection running full colors and not just flashing red while we had power outage due to the event. We've also this week had a new hire who has some HVAC and electronics background. That transitions very well into the signal tech position. If you remember, there's no training out there for signal techs. There's no associate's degree that you can get. And so finding these people with the right skill sets that can come in here, have that troubleshooting mindset and solve these problems is very critical to our success and being able to maintain the system. So we still have one signal tech position out there that we're looking to hire. So if you know of anybody with that background and that experience, send them our way. Experience. Go back a year, our combined experience over in the signal tech shop was probably about 1.5 years due to turnover. Fast forward a year, we're about 4.5 years experience when you combine everything together. So you can start to see that acceleration, the things that they're learning over there, the training we're giving, that's going to continue to make our system better. And it's very important that we focus on that. And then compensation. The city has done a pay plan study, and they were looking at phasing that in over multiple years. In the traffic operations group, Sarah McCracken has done a great job of looking at the budget, and we're implementing that 100% right now. And that's so that we can get the right staff in there to really help us as we implement these projects to make sure they're successful. Because if we don't have good staff, it doesn't matter how much money we throw at it, it's not going to be effective. And so, but in order to accomplish that 100%, we did have to freeze a position, shift some budget around, and we're going to have to keep an eye on a couple areas. We may have to use some of our maintenance funds potentially, depending on how things go, but we feel like we can do that successfully and still maintain a good service until we get other things in place. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. From a funding standpoint, So you'll see there is the recommendation was moving our maintenance funding from about 160 up to 450,000. That's a big jump. And it's going to take some time. But if we want to, and we think we'll get there, and we want to see how we can get there, but I want to keep that on your horizon, so that if we want to have a system that is maintained, operated, and continue to keep up with technology, we need to increase that. So as we move into the year one projects, the next slide is you'll see we have completed our Connected School Beacon project. That is up and running. We're continuing to monitor it, but we're seeing benefits and success. When we had the school cancellations due to the snow, we were able to remotely turn off those beacons so that they're not running all day when school's not in session. Previously, they would have just flashed. So we're able to be more responsive because of this project. Signal timing, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more. We're continuing our planning on upgrading our communications and evaluating our central system that we use. So moving into the next slide, signal timing. Hope you'll hang with me a little bit. I want to set some expectations on what we're talking about signal timing. So there's lots of different operations. I've got 3 here to kind of give you a flavor of how signals operate from a pre-time standpoint, an actuated, coordinated, or dynamic, adaptive, sorry. And looking at cycle length, vehicle detection, and communication. Now, it's a lot technical. You're probably already glazing over a little bit. So I'm going to use an example, and Councilman Westbrook, this may be right up your alley. Use a pizza house as an example. So think of our cycle length as the pizza size and the slices. And then your vehicle detection as whether or not you have doorbells when you walk in the door or in the drive-thru. And then lastly, communication, just a phone in your system. So talking about pre-timed signals, what does that look like? We have a fixed cycle length, we do not have any detection, and there's no communication. So when you're selling your pizzas, you're only selling one size. It may just be a large. And those slices of that pizza are pre-sliced. So the saying I use, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit with pre-timed signal timing. There's no detection and there's no communication requirements. So an example is Irwin and Bonner right outside City Hall. That's a pre-timed signal. There's no detection, there's no communication. It's set and it functions. So from an operations standpoint, somebody walks into your pizza house, you stand there for a minute at the counter, and then you go to a minute to the drive-thru window, whether there's somebody there or not. It doesn't matter. That's what you do. So going to the next, actuated, coordinated. So we still only have one pizza size. That cycle length is fixed, but we can start pre-slicing that based upon your need. Do you need smaller or bigger slices? Kind of customize it a little bit. And we have detection at this intersection. So that means we've got doorbells as you come in the door or in the drive-thru. So if we need to spend a minute at the counter or 30 seconds at the drive-thru, we can do that based upon the need. And so an example of that is the Beckham corridor, where we have some actuated coordinated signal timing. The last one is your adaptive. So that cycle length can change. It's dynamic. We can now sell large, small, medium pizzas and slice that up based upon the need that you have. We have detection on all the movements and also system detectors. So not only do we see you when you come in the door or the drive-thru, we've maybe got a camera in the parking lot to know when you enter the parking lot. But also, we've got a phone line. So maybe somebody calls in, you know they're coming in 15 minutes. You see them when they enter the parking lot and when they come to the counter. So it gives you a lot more flexibility from that standpoint on adaptive. Currently, we do not have any systems running adaptive within the city of Tyler. So what are we talking about as part of this retiming right now? It's the next slide you'll see, it's this actuated, coordinated traffic signal timing is what we're doing as part of this project. Go one more slide. So traffic signal timing, what are we not doing? There's no new equipment being purchased. This is strictly an optimization of existing traffic patterns. We do traffic counts, we evaluate that, we come up with recommendations, we implement it, and there's a before and after study. And this is something we need to be doing every couple of years because traffic patterns change. So there's a pattern of doing this very often. Next slide. Again, what are some expectations from a traffic signal timing perspective? So if you're on a major street like Beckham or South Broadway, you should get green through multiple intersections. That's the expectation. If you're on a minor street, say Beckham and Houston being the minor, you can expect maybe some higher delays because the focus is moving traffic on the major street. Now, after you turn off of that minor street onto the major, you may get a signal, red signal, the next intersection down until you get into that band of traffic. So that's just some expectations. And there could be some breaks or what we call early returns. So what does that mean? It means that we can't give you green signals for all 20 intersections on a corridor. So there may be a reason to stop you at an intersection to group people together and then move them through the system. So that can be planned. And an early return is just say that minor street doesn't need as much green time, so you go back to the major street. Well, because you got a green earlier than we had really planned, you may actually get a red at the next signal for just a little bit. So those are some expectations for how signals operate, and we talk about timing.
That was a great explanation. I know you hear from me a lot, and I did not realize there were no adaptive in the city.
Yes, ma'am. So there used to be some adaptive in the city, but currently they're no longer working.
And what happened to the adaptive that we had?
So when you look at adaptive, communications to the traffic signals is extremely important, and vehicle detection is extremely important. If you don't have those components, it's not going to work well. And so just from not maintaining those and keeping those things up to date, two, we need the staff to make sure, because those get more complicated. So we want to have the staff to operate. We just want to put something out there and let it go. So we will be working towards that, and we've kind of evaluated some of the corridors, what would it take to get that back up and running. But we also want to make sure it's the right corridor to implement that on.
So in the master plan, there will be adaptive.
Yes, ma'am. That is part of the plan that we have put in place, that we can implement that and have put in funding to hopefully do that. Plus, as we upgrade equipment and get our system working efficiently, then it can more easily translate into putting that adaptive.
And Cameron, I think you're doing a great job. When you go east on Loop 323 from this south part of town, they're perfectly timed, I think. So I can already see an improvement. You know, I guess the most traffic in the city is in my district, so that's why I get lots of phone calls. And but I can see improvement, and thank you for this explanation of adaptive, because I understand better when I text you that you can't really fix it right then, right?
Yes, ma'am. But there are things definitely that they may not be operating correctly. So simple as a detection that quits working or a pedestrian push button that gets stuck, that affects even this actuated coordinated. So making sure that we learn how to identify that quickly and fix it. And again, back to staffing makes a huge difference in our ability to achieve that. The next slide will show you what we have done in the past. It's an overview. So to the right is north. It's a little busy. But the blue segments are what were retimed as part of the 2019 retiming and the master plan study. The red segments are what we're doing as part of this retiming effort that I'm presenting today. And you can start seeing how they tie together. So we'll start getting all of Broadway, the southeast loop, and then Troop and Beckham. So those corridors start getting tied together. And we're doing 18 total intersections as part of this study. The goal and the plan is about 15 per year, but it's kind of like a ball of yarn. As you start unwinding it, you got to find a good stopping spot. So that's why we have 18 right now. If you'll go
quick question
to the next slide.
Quick question. So if you don't, I'm not a technical guy. So if you don't have adaptive, how do you time them where it's not just manual? I mean, how do you do it?
Yes, sir. So when I talk about actuated coordinated, we go out there, we do traffic counts. Your traffic patterns are typically similar from time of day. So we slice up, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and 3 p.m. to 7. You have people commuting into work and out of work. And so you can get an idea of what the demand is needed at that intersection. And so then you make those decisions on, okay, I'm going to give Broadway 60 seconds and Shiloh 30 seconds based upon demand. And now that actuated coordinated, the detection allows you to adjust those a little bit based upon demand, but you're getting a timing in place that follows what that demand is needed. Is that?
So it's the timing is changed based on historic traffic patterns and not one light talking to the light in front of it or behind it.
Yeah, so with that coordinated system, we do say, okay, we know it's going to take you 30 seconds to travel from one intersection to the next. And so we're able to set those patterns up like that, if that makes sense.
Is that at normal speed or do you like on Broadway? My theory is if you can go between 37 and 42 miles an hour on Broadway, you can make it out to Cumberland. But you can very seldom drive 37 to 42 because somebody slow gets in front of you.
Yes, sir.
So with what you're doing, does it take that into account?
It does. So when you're doing that coordinated signal system, you're having a travel speed. So maybe that 37 is your ideal speed. And that's how that signal timing helps, is you know that driving 37, I'm going to get through all the intersections. Maybe if you drive 45, you're going to get to an intersection too fast and get stopped. Or if you drive 30, you're going to miss. We call it a green band. So that band kind of travels down the corridor. And if you're in that band, you should be able to get through multiple intersections.
So this week when I texted you about the intersection at South Broadway and Grande, the cars on Grande are backing up through 3 lights. And I don't normally go that way, but I have for a few weeks to test that. And when I texted you, the cars going east and west on Grande were running the end of the light because they had sat through that light 3 times and, they were, I guess, getting frustrated. But so in light of what you just explained to Don, what do you do when you get a text?
So,
look at the traffic pattern again, or?
So one thing that I will look for is we're not making big changes at that point. When you say that there's a problem, what I'm looking for, do we have a detection issue that is malfunctioning? Or is there a pedestrian push button that is malfunctioning? Because maybe it should only take 20 seconds to get through that signal, but we need 30 seconds for a ped. Well, that throws off my entire coordination. And it takes time for things to get back in step and so it's coordinated. So I'm looking to see, is there a equipment issue that is giving me a problem until we do a bigger retiming effort like this. But there are maybe smaller tweaks that we can make in the meantime. But this allows us to do that big, broader, 1,000-foot view. How are things working together to the most efficient?
So and that was at 8 o'clock in the morning, so.
Highest traffic time.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the piece that probably, this won't necessarily solve for the capacity issues. So there will be during those, essentially that kind of 8 o'clock period or after 5 o'clock PM period, but there's still capacity issues, and traffic signalization won't, essentially our timing or working on the traffic signalizations doesn't necessarily be able to kind of move that traffic capacity piece any better.
Correct. So there's a limit to what you can do with signal timing. But if it's been 5 years since we retimed, we've had traffic growth. So maybe that timing at Grande and the Broadway needs to be adjusted to give more time to Grande. And that's what this can help achieve through that process.
And the map that you showed where you are right now with the green, do you anticipate that you'll be at the Target intersection on South Broadway by Christmas?
Of next year?
No, I was really thinking of 2021.
Which, did you have something in mind?
Right in front of Target and Walmart on South Broadway.
Yeah, so think about this timing effort. It does take time. So we want to also collect counts when traffic is in session, implement them and fine tune them when traffic is in session. So with us starting this now, we'll get the data collected this spring. They'll get it analyzed, and then you look to implementing it next fall early. So that would be kind of your timeline for this improvement of signal timing.
Of just between these two green points.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here on South Broadway is from Grande down to Market Square, and including Grande and Sutherland, and then along the southeast loop from Donnybrook all the way over to University, and then along Troop from Lindbergh all the way up to Fleschel is what we'll be doing as part of this. And again, that kind of ties into those previous corridors that we did.
So that Southland intersection is where the biggest problem is on South Broadway, right?
Southtown? Or
Southtown?
The one over there at the Walmart and Target?
Yes,
Yeah.
Southtown is, yes ma'am.
So Cameron, when you're working on South Broadway where Linda's talking about, do you have to get TxDOT involved at all?
So the city is 100% responsible for operating and maintaining the signal timing. So that is completely our responsibility. If you were to start getting into the roadway improvements, then that's TxDOT involvement. One thing that we can look, can we coordinate with, the 49 in Broadway? That is not the city's traffic signals. But is there anything we can do to help coordinate those with those adjacent intersections?
So when you're changing the timing, are we as sophisticated enough where you're doing it from like with your phone? Or are you going out there and you're doing it manually?
It depends. We have roughly 50% of our intersections have communication, and those tie into that central system that I mentioned. So we can actually make changes remotely to about 50% of our traffic signals. The other ones, you have to manually go out there and input it into the controller.
So, and the second question, and then I'll quit. At what point in the 10-year plan will these adaptive lights be added?
I think we programmed it around year 4 or 5, maybe year 6 is what we looked at. I don't recall the specific year, but that's where we budgeted. That previous adaptive system that we had, it was called system ACS Lite. We actually still have a citywide license for that. So if we get a corridor up and running that has the equipment and we feel confident, we might can implement that sooner on that corridor. Something we're looking at.
You could be a hero or you could be a villain.
I think
He thinks I'm a villain.
It's been threatened. You put my picture on the traffic signal cabinets and phone number, I'd be in trouble. So
Cameron, I've noticed the work that along Beckham is that traffic flows a lot better. But then I've also noticed at Broadway and 4th and 5th, the lights timing on those have changed. You might all of a sudden may have a red and then boom, it pops green. I've had some interesting comments from a couple people. Why all of a sudden they hit it red and then boom, it turns green again?
we haven't made any changes the 4th and 5th that I'm aware of, but that's something may not be working right, but we can look at. So any comments like that you have, definitely send them our way and we can evaluate.
He does respond quickly. Thank you, Cameron.
All right, carry on.
We can probably kind of go very quickly through these next. This is just a summary of intersections that were completed before. 9 on the Beckham corridor from 5th to Gentry, 6 on Broadway from Donnybrook, Chimney Rock up to the Loop, and then a couple others. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the intersections that, again, that we are proposing to do on South Broadway. There are 8 intersections there going from Grande down to Market Square, plus Grande at Sutherland. And then the next slide shows you along Troop Highway and the southeast loop what those intersections are that we're doing as part of this study. So that rounds out the 18 total intersections that we're doing. And that leads us to the last slide, which just shows that the request that City Council authorized the city manager to execute an engineering contract with Kimley Horn & Associates in the amount of $108,000 for the Intelligent Transportation System Master Plan Year 1 traffic signal retiming improvements.
I'm not asking any more questions. Any more questions for Cameron?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Sellers, second by McKellar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good luck, sir.
Yes.
Next item.
Next item, the Tyler Bike Stripes project. Something you may be very familiar with. I'll give you a brief background. You'll go to the next slide. So this project is 36.6 miles of bike lanes, shared lanes, and bike routes throughout the city. Has a downtown hub, 11 spokes. This process started back in 2015 with Bill Gibbs and Jeff Austin III on the Bicycle Advisory Committee. UT Tyler became involved, did design. We got a grant in 2017. So through 2017 to 2020, there's been design efforts. UT Tyler has been leading that. We've had a consultant help as well. Had public hearings, and now we are finally to the part of getting it implemented. So what the project includes are bike lanes, bike share lanes, some buffered lanes, and actually just some bike routes. So there's a different variety depending upon the location. A couple items to note are that there is no loss of parking. So these bike lanes and any on-street parking are going to coexist. That's been a big piece of this as far as citizen feedback. And so that's important. Historic preservation, we do have some brick streets that are involved. We are not putting any paint on those brick streets. Those are going to be signed as bike routes. So those were a couple things from a public involvement that we wanted to make sure and note. The construction is, with the next slide, you'll see begin mid to late February, last about 4 months. There will be some temporary probably impact on parking. Maybe that's a day or 2 days at the most as we come through and stripe things. So just so that you're aware of that. And then as far as bids and construction costs. So we had 2 bidders that submitted. The low bid was Stripe-A-Zone, Inc. So the total construction cost is a little over $500,000. But because of the grant, there's an 80-20 share. So the city is responsible for 20% of the construction cost. So that is what we're asking for approval today, of the $108,908.28 is your recommendation. So with that, recommended that City Council authorize the city manager to execute a construction contract with Stripe-A-Zone Inc. for a construction of the Tyler Bike Stripe project in the amount of $108,908.28.
So the 80%, is that TxDOT?
It is actually federal match that goes through TxDOT.
And so you only had 2 bids?
Yes, ma'am.
Or is this company local?
They are not. They're actually based out of Grand Prairie, but we did check the references, and they definitely came back good as recommended.
Was the other bid local?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I know that when I first came on council, we were having this discussion, and the city manager reminded me or asked me, he said, Bob, this isn't as simple as opening up your car door and painting the stripe as you drive down the street. And I'm glad to see that we progressed past that point. So I'm excited for this project to take place. With that, I move to approve M3.
Second.
Motion by Westbrook, second by Sellers. Any further discussion?
I just want to know what a shared bike lane is.
Yes, ma'am. So a shared bike lane would be, so versus, go back a couple slides maybe. So on the left is your bike lane. That's where it's only a bike is supposed to travel in that lane. A shared lane would be a sense where a car and a bike both utilize the same lane, but there's that marking there to kind of help identify where a bicyclist should ride, so it positions them better in the lane, and that those coexist together. And the reason why you would do that is if we don't have enough width on the street in order to do a specific bike lane.
Thank you.
Tell us again where this lane will be located?
It is throughout the city.
Throughout?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So it covers from north to south and
Okay.
east to west.
Thank you.
One thing I'd suggest, Cameron, is an education component, because this is going to be new, and a shared bike lane. You know, the car's always going to think the bike lane's for them, and bike get out of the way. So for the riders out there, just for their safety, we just need to do a good job on educating the public that, hey, this is coming and it's out there, and be aware of it.
Absolutely.
I agree with James. You know, I don't know what it is between, and I probably shouldn't go here, but I don't know what it is between cars and bicycles that we can't just love one another. You know, it's just, it becomes so territorial. You know, I've got the car I've got the bike and I've got the right of way. It's just, I just want everybody to try to make this work and give it a chance and be open to the concept and be kind to one another as we drive our respective vehicles. Absolutely. So anyway, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron.
M4, hi Lisa.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
Cameron's a hard act to follow.
I loved his pizza house.
Absolutely.
All righty. M4 is a request to authorize a construction contract with Morton Enterprise for construction of the 2021 asphalt crack seal project. Crack sealing is one of the tools that the city uses in our overall pavement management program. It's that process where we go in and insert tar material into the cracks that are existing on a particular street. And typically, we do this work in anticipation of the either overlay or various seal coat projects that we'll be doing later in the year. So we did put together a list of streets, put those out for public bids. We did receive one bid from Morton Enterprise. This is the same company that's been doing our crack sealing for the past couple of years. They're the only company that ever bids on this project. So they did submit this bid for $322,500, and we're requesting that council authorize the contract with Morton Enterprise in this amount.
So why don't more people bid on these projects?
This is a sort of a specialized type of process. It takes a very specific type of equipment, and your normal paving contractors don't typically own this equipment and do this type of work. It is sort of a specialty type of construction.
Any other questions of Lisa?
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Wynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Lisa. Hello, Mike.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
Everyone's doing well. And I would like to move that if Cameron solves all our traffic problems, we do put his picture on one of those control boxes. He's doing a great job, though. A little background this morning. Southside Wastewater, my name is Mike Norris, manager of wastewater treatment here at the city. And Southside Treatment Plant is located at 620 West Cumberland Road. It was built in 1955, and the capacity of the plant is 9 million gallons a day. And currently we treat around 6 million. Part of that treatment process is the addition of chlorine and the removal of chlorine. We do that by, of course, adding chlorine to remove any harmful bacteria like your fecal coliforms before we release the treated wastewater into the environment. But we cannot allow chlorine to be introduced to the environment either. So we have to remove the chlorine with sulfur dioxide, 2 chemicals that we use at the plant. They are very, very toxic chemicals. At any one time, we may have in inventory 9 one-ton cylinders of each chemical. With that said, well, and the growth around the plant, we need to be proactive in maintaining our safety of those chemicals to the citizens, the operators at the plant. So with that said, I'm here with M4 to request for approval of an engineering contract with KSA for the Southside Plant chlorination, dechlorination improvement project, which includes rehabilitation of the chlorination and dechlorination building, which actually means we want to enclose those cylinders in a building. They're currently, the chlorine cylinders are currently open air. They do have a roof, but they are open air. The sulfur dioxides are currently enclosed in a building. So we want to enclose those chlorine cylinders. We want installation of a scrubber for both the chlorine and sulfur dioxide. It'll be one scrubber, but it'll handle, in case we have a leak, a problem, the scrubber will handle either one. And replacement upgrades to the chlorination chemical feed equipment and replacement upgrades to the electrical and control systems. The consultant is KSA Engineers. The cost of work is $267,700. And the anticipated completion of design is October 2021. Any questions?
So what's the difference in how it's being dechlorinated now versus how it'll be dechlorinated in the future?
No difference. The process will not change. We will use the same number of cylinders that we have. We will chlorinate the same way. We'll just have all new updated equipment. The equipment that we're using now was installed in 1992. So it's 30 years old. So it's in need of an upgrade. We'll have, as you can imagine, 30 years of technology has improved quite a bit with the feed systems, the monitoring, the leak detection, that type of thing, which is very, very important. Because as you well know, that plant has become surrounded with homes, schools, churches, parks. So we really want to watch and take care of that system and maintain it properly for safety issues.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike?
I think most of your new facilities that are built, the storage facility isn't enclosed, not just a roof unit, isn't it?
Yes. We actually did that at Golden Road probably 10 to 12 years ago. That system was an open air also, but it is now totally enclosed with scrubbers because of the number of homes and the concern of a gas release. So I think that it's just would be prudent for the city to take that same steps to ensure the safety of our citizens and operators to do the same at the wastewater plant.
Okay. Any other questions?
So moved.
Motion by McKellar, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mike.
Good morning, Mayor and Council, City Manager. My name is Renessa Wade. I'm Managing Director, City of Tyler. Before you today was an item that's probably going to feel a little deja vu. We were just here at the last council meeting to talk about the Neighborhood Services Building and the remodel. Brian with Fitzpatrick and Associates was here and he gave you a complete overview of the entire project, phases 1 and phase 2. If you recall, he said that phase 2 was just bid the day before on January 12th and that we'd be coming back to you at this particular city council meeting to get you to approve the execution of the contract and the moving forward of the phase 2 renovations. So I'm not going to go through everything, but I'll give you just a brief update that phase 2 will consist of parking lot security, resurfacing of the parking lot area. Currently, we have employees that are getting out of their cars and they're being approached by citizens to ask them questions, answer questions, people that have really nothing to do with neighborhood services building sometime. And the employees would like to get out of their cars and be able to go into the building without having to encounter those type of things. We will also be improving the facade on the outside of the building. We don't have a picture of what it looks like right now, but this is a photo and the next photo is a picture of what it will look like in the future. We did receive the bids on January 12th. The low bidder at that time was Garrett and Associates. Garrett is the same contractor that was awarded the bid for phase 1, so it's a little exciting to have a little continuity there. The bid came in at $427,800 and is right in line with what Fitzpatrick had estimated that our costs would be. And so I'm before you today to ask you to go ahead and approve the contract with Garrett and Associates for phase 2 of the neighborhood services renovation. And I'm open for any questions.
How's this funded?
Great question. So part of this is funded through the HUD grant because we received a grant for COVID, and part of it is funded through the CFM reimbursement.
CRF.
CRF reimbursement.
Garrett and Associates, a local contractor.
Yes.
Any other questions for Vanessa?
Just updating that building will just make that area just look so much better. The building is in desperate need of some help.
Yes.
Brian Phillips is here, if anybody has any questions for Brian.
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Sellers. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Council.
Vanessa. Now we move to the consent agenda. If anybody want to pull any items off the agenda or approve as is.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion by Westbrook, second by Curtis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes as written. City manager's report.
Yeah, this is, as I was trying to get everything ready, this is the one thing I didn't prepare for. Quite a bit of information continues to get pushed out on the vaccines. And so that is something that through the city social media and Net Health social media, we'll continue to make sure for those right now in phase 1A and phase 1B to get registered, to get on the wait list. One of the things that we've been very excited about is the use of Harvey Hall for to be able to do drive-through vaccinations, and we'll continue on that during the coming months. In fact, you'll see probably quite a bit of that. Net Health estimates they can probably do about 8,000 shots a day when, as far as the amount, the quantity is fully available. Yesterday, the fire department had its record number for testing of as far as possible recruits into the for the fire academy that we'd be running ourselves in-house. This would be our first time to actually hire people who are non-certified, actually first time in a while. The prior, probably about 2 decades ago, they did have that process, but this would allow for those who are non-certified firefighters to be able to, they were able to apply. We had over 400 applicants, and so they went through the written test and physical test yesterday, and from there we'll continue to review and to kind of narrow down. We have a few openings available, and so to be able to kind of put them into that spot. And so, Mayor, that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that. We do have executive session today. Don't expect any action, and we'll probably be back there for about 10 minutes. So let me read this.
I have one question.
Sure.
Mr. City Manager, who gets the injections now and how, what the process is so that people will know?
The injections are for phase 1A, which is your public safety, and your frontline kind of workers in relationship to public safety and the hospitals are that phase 1A. So they opened that up, probably back in mid-December. And so there's still kind of last calls for those guys, but they can kind of get in. But we really have fully opened it up to 1B. And 1B is those over the age of 65 and those with medical conditions. And the list of medical conditions, there's a pretty lengthy kind of laundry list on what you may classify as medical conditions. And so for those kind of wondering or a little concerned, I would say that they should go take a look at that list, see if they qualify for that, and then register for the wait list. And it's sometimes, we hear about getting on a wait list, and it can be kind of somewhat concerning about just how long am I going to be on a wait list. As those availabilities come in, one of the things I'm very proud of Net Health and our local hospitals for doing is they are getting that out as soon as it comes in. And so that sometimes there's a little bit that just, I know the mayor and I, when we meet with Net Health kind of every other week, we sometimes get a little bit irritated that, well, why can't we have a more regular schedule for vaccinations? But the difficulty is because of just the intermittent supply of vaccinations that are coming out at this point, it is difficult to kind of plan weeks in ahead as we'd prefer. I think once you see kind of a steady supply coming through, you'll be able to see kind of a more regular, type of dates that they would have programmed for Harvey Hall for the vaccinations, at least through Net Health. One of the things that they are talking about is to having kind of alternating days so that for first shots and second shots, so that, say, for example, their intent is for Monday, Wednesday, Friday would be first shots, Tuesday, Thursdays, second shots. So to kind of have involved in the drive-through.
Great, thank you.
All right, here we go. The city council may go into executive session regarding any item posted on the agenda as authorized by Title V, Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. Notice is hereby given that the city council may go into executive session in accordance with the following provision of the Government Code. Under Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, personnel matters, deliberation regarding the following: the employment, duties, and evaluation of the city manager. Any final action to be taken by the city council will be taken in open session. So we're going into executive session and be back probably in 10 minutes.
Yeah, maybe y'all gone to the pizza. I know,
All right, Bob says we're ready, so we're back from executive session. We do not have any action items, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. I never hit that thing.